like read his status.
No, you can't get this up. There you go.
Where's Alicia?
He just said that his home.
For Shabbos? For Shabbos, she's going to be
Half Shabbos.
One Shabbos.
And then Thursday night. Thursday night.
Oh, yeah. Nothing. All right. So as Alicia put on the thing, this will be probably be the last week of the Shovivim now, especially that I heard that Yehuda doesn't like it, so we're for sure going to be the last week of the Shovivim. We can go back to Minchas Chinuch, Tanya, whatever the other ones. Next week though, there will not be Shiur, the Beis Yosef dinner. Next week, Moshe Wolf was honored last year, so if you didn't come last year, Moshe, we can come this year and Moshe Malzman. Yeah. Okay, so I start. I've been doing the past 2 weeks just with the Ovart, Shalom Bias, Taras Mishpacha kind of art, and then we'll have some halachic discussions. If anyone has like Taras Mishpacha questions, that's something that they're like bothering them or whatever, different psukim. Maybe we could do also some of that if people just want to ask random questions. But Ovart just based on this week's parsha. This Alshach asks why it says v'yichuli truma. It should say v'yitnuli truma. You're giving truma to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So his teretz, I think, is something that is very vitally important to understand in marriages and relationships, but especially marriage relationship. And he's talking about the relationship between the Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael, but those two things always kind of correlate to each other. The relationship in Ish L'Ishtay and the relationship between Klal Yisrael and Rebbeinu Shalom are constantly used interchangeably in Psukim, in Chazal. It's not for nothing that Chazal say that an Ish V'Ish Zoich Shechina Shur B'nei. It's because the relationship is very much connected, and the Mishkan was really about, in its essence, was about building a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's Shechina, it's Sheikhini to be able to relate to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the two things really do go hand in hand. But I think the word is based, the depth of the word is based on something that I bring out from a Rambam Hilchos Shuvah. I've spoken about it, these Rambams in the past at length, but we'll hit the Iker Nekudas again. I think they are very crucial. The Rambam starts off, he's talking about the mitzvah of Avas Hashem. And the Rambam breaks it up into different stages. I'm not going to get into the whole nitty-gritty of it right now, all the different details of the Rambam. But the Rambam says that he describes this Ma'ila of being the Ma'ila of Avodah Hashem, that what is Avodah Hashem Ava is someone who's Oisek in Avodah Lo Mipnei Davar Shabbat Olam. He's Oises Emes Neishu Emes. That's it. He's just Avodah Hashem for no reason. Nothing is pushing him. No schar, no einish, no cheshbon. Oises Emes Neishu Emes just because he loves the Rebbeinu Shalom. And then he describes this Ava, and he says, what is this Ava? Is the Ava that a person should love Hashem, Ava G'day L'Ser Ad Ma'od, Ashrei Nafshu Kshura Ba'avas Hashem, Nimtza Shoyge B'Talmid, Ki L'Choyle Ava. As if he's sick from Ava. That's what the Rambam describes, this level from Ava. It's familiar with the Pasuk in Shir Hashirim, we sing it, Choyle Ava Ani. That's the idea that that's how stark the Ava should be. That's first thing the Rambam says. Then the Rambam goes weiter and says, Omru Chachamim, Shema Timer, maybe a person should say, I'm going to learn Torah b'shvil she'asher, that I should be rich. Or b'shvil she'eker Rebbe, I should get covered. That's why I'm going to do mitzvahs. Maybe that should be a way a person should do it. And again, this is after the Rambam already said the mitzvah of Avos Hashem is not to do that, not to do mitzvahs for any reason, just for Avos Hashem. Now he says, Omru Chamim, maybe a person should say, I'm supposed to learn Torah for this. Well, you just said that's not that. Avos Hashem is not that. Avos Hashem is Oisam Sefnei Emes. The Rambam spoke that out in Halacha Aleph and Beis. Why in Halacha Daled now? He's asking a new question. Maybe a person should learn Torah that I should be an usher. And the Rambam says, no, that's not the way it should be done. The Oida Mechachamim Mitzvah it's Ma'od goes on in quotes a Mishnah and others, and he continues Hey, and he says that you should know though that Kol Oisik B'Torah Kedei L'Kabel Schar O Kedei Shelo Tegil L'Pernos says Oisik B'Shaloi L'Shma. If you learn Torah for this reason in order to get schar, that's called Shaloi L'Shma. If you don't do this for it, it's called Oisik B'Lishma. And the Chachamim said L'Olam Yasig Adam B'Torah Afilu Shalosh B'Torah B'Lishma. So here again, he started off Halacha Aleph. He says the mitzvah of Hashem, the basic mitzvah is to be Oisik Teishu Emes, not because of anything. Shem or Timer, maybe a person should say that I'm going to learn in order that I should get an usher. I'm going to learn in order to call Rebbe. You're not supposed to do that. But the Chum said, why didn't the Rambam say this earlier? When he was talking about the Iker Mitzvah, when he's of Av Hashem, that he said, Av Hashem is Emes. No, the Chum said, one other question, one last question, and we'll put it back together. He says, the Rambam continues, says, when a person teaches children, you're not supposed to teach them to learn. Here's the key words. You do not teach them Ella, only to learn from Yira, that is how you are supposed to teach children. That is the way you're supposed to do it. That's how the Rambam finishes our. Then he says,
Isn't that a Mishnah?
What?
Isn't that a Mishnah of us?
The Mishnah of us says, which Mishnah of us is talking about?
That it says that you should teach the kids like that. Isn't that a quote verbatim from there?
No. I don't think there's any Mishnah of us that way. I do not believe so. That a person should teach children and women to aim a lamdinus on Ella. Definitely not a Mishnah of us. Maybe it says that you can't teach them to do it. The Chiddush Rambam is that you are only supposed to teach them that way. Now, I believe the idea is as follows in the Rambam. There's two different points going. There's two different levels. There's what drives a person in life. What's the underlying thing that gets him going, and what is his goal? What are his ambitions? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing everything that he's doing? That's the beginning of the Rambam. That's what I'm saying. Avodas Hashem demands that the reason why you're doing all this is not ultimately because you want anything. What are you trying to get out of this? What's the goal? What's the end game for Klal Yisrael? That's the beginning of the Rambam for an Avodas Hashem album. Then the Rambam says, okay, but listen, at the end of the day, that's very nice. But maybe a person will say, bottom line is what's getting me out of bed in the morning? What's getting me to go to at 6 o'clock to get up early? What's getting me in the hard times, cold, don't want to go out at night, it's rainy? What is driving that person in the day to day? There's a difference between the way I've put it in the past. There's a difference between drive and motivation. Drive is what drives you, what is really behind everything. What's the engine that gets you going? But then there's, in the day-to-day motivation, how do you motivate people, right? You can have in a business, you have employees. So you have the drive is the big goal. Okay, this is where we want to get. We want to become, a Fortune 500 company, whatever it is. We have our drive. But then there's the day-to-day motivation, right? There's the bonuses, the trips, the whatever it is that gets people motivated, get people working. So I'm saying you're right. Okay, the big picture has to be Oisam Snei Shoemis. But what happens in the day-to-day relationship with your Shalom? Maybe a person should say that the day-to-day I do B'Sir Shei Asher L'maisa gets me out of bed in the morning. The fact that I'm going to be rich gets me out of bed in the morning. The fact that I'm going to get covered gets me out of bed in the morning. Maybe that's how I should build my motivation on a day-to-day basis. That's the whole second part of the Rambam. The Rambam says that's also incorrect. We don't do that. Our motivation on a day-to-day basis should also be what we call L'Shma. Should be L'Shem Hashem. Should not be Shel Shema. But, and here's the key point that I'm saying, but in that chelek, there's a loyal miyasagadam term that if what you need to get you out of bed in the morning is to do mitzvah shalol lishma, do it. Should we tell shalol lishma bal lishma? If what you need to get yourself moving, to get your kids moving, whatever it is shalol lishma, absolutely do it. So we tell shalol lishma bal lishma. And it goes one step weiter in the Rambam. This is the real chiddush and real power to me of this Rambam. It says, therefore, I'm telling you, this mitoch shalosh balishma is not just an eitzah if you're stuck. Mitoch shalosh. It's telling you about the nature of human beings. The way they come lidei lishma is by doing things shaloi lishma, and that's how they come to it. So therefore, if you want to know how are you going to become motivated, how are you going to motivate kids who don't know anything yet? They can't understand the concept of shaloi lishma. How are you going to get them out of bed in the morning? How are you going to get kids to do mitzvahs? Ein melamdim es tinaikus or nashim. In the times of the Rambam, he's talking about where women were completely uneducated. There was no sophistication of thought for women. He's not talking about women necessarily in our days. At least that's what. The Rambam is saying is that in such a situation, therefore, fakir, you only teach them to be ovid shalishma. Ein melamdim son ella. You teach them to do something that you're going to get scar, because that's really what's going to get them going. If you try telling them to put on tzitzis because you love Hashem, it's going to be a joke. It's going to be a dimyon, and it's going to end up screwing with their head. It's going to end up they're just going to create some sort of false idea of what the Rebbeinu Shalom means to them, and it's going to be fake. There's going to be nothing real about it. Their way of thinking is not sophisticated enough to get that. Therefore, you have to tell kids, when you want to tell kids, why are you putting on tzitzis? You're putting on tzitzis because there's going to be this great thing called Elam Haba one day, and you're going to get amazing stuff there. You're going to be gummy bears the size bigger than you. Or you can tell them even more practically, because you're going to get a Shabbos treat. That's why you're doing it. That's why you put on tzitzis. That is the way that I'm telling you. You say in chinuch, train children to do things for schar on a day-to-day basis. That's how you have to do it. Because the day-to-day motivation is going to come only from doing it shelo lishma, and then eventually you come lishma. The Rambam earlier, the first part of the Rambam, when he's talking about this underlying drive, the context, the big picture, and that avas Hashem, the Rambam calls that a choilas ava. That's not something. What the Rambam means there is that when your ava is based on that, it's great. It could be strong. It could be romantic. It could be gishmak, but it's choilas ahava. That's not real ava. It's something that's just, it's big picture. You have this excitement, right? You're ready to get married, and you've got this, your whole life feels like, like it's different now, and there's this excitement. It's an ava, but it is a choilas ahava. And what happens, and just like in any choilas ahava, is that when that, inevitably, that ava can dissipate. And that is what happens when your whole ava is based on that. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. It's a choilah. It's what we call being love sick. But that's how a lot of people's relationships start the way. That's how they're supposed to start. They start with a choilah zahava, with this big picture idea, like now my life has purpose, it makes sense, gishmak, and they have this choilah zahava built into it. But then the question that's all in the first half of the parak. That's the choilah zahava that the Rambam began with. That's beautiful. That's great. But then the question becomes, what happens in the day to day? What happens when you wake up 3 months later and you're like, what am I doing? The ava's gone. I don't know what happened to that ava. It was a choilas ahava, and now what? Right? Now you're like the katan on the Rambam, and you're ready. Now you're ready to really start and build a real ava. But that ava comes from one thing, from understanding that you're doing this for a reason. You're doing this for a purpose. You're doing this because it's for you. When you understand that this now, whatever relationship you're involved in, whether it's relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom, relationship with marriage, is the best thing for you, that's how you have to start it. If you're going to start at that point, you're going to say, you know what, you're right. The choilas ahava is gone, but I'm doing this for someone else. It's a mitzvah, it's great, to be able to give back to someone. To be able to, to make their life good is beautiful. And I'm willing to live my life that way. You're going to end up bitter and resentful, and it's never going to work. It's never going to come with the ava that I'm saying. The ava first has to come from you. Meaning what that means is that it has to come from internally, where you understand that this is great for you. You're that kid that needs to understand that I'm doing this because this is the best thing for me, because this is going to imagine you tell somebody, okay, you have an ability, giving to other people is great, right? It's a mitzvah, it's a beautiful thing. Now you get to also give to people every day of your life that are mamish you. And they're about your legacy, and they're about you, giving over from yourself because, you love them more than anything else in the world. That's a really beautiful picture to set up for somebody, right? You have your life set up in a way that you can do mitzvah and chesed every day with the people who are most important to you and mean the most to you. That's basically that is the hakara that a person needs to come to, that this thing is the kid's ice cream cone, is the kid's gummy bear. That's what it is for you. When you recognize that, when you're oisek in it, shaloi lishma, you're oisek in it because it's the best thing for you. That's the way it comes. That's the way it's Malay de lishma, and that's real avos Hashem. The first stage of avos Hashem is great. The first stage of ava is beautiful, but it's choilas ahava. It doesn't stay. That big picture ava is not really what gets in the day to day. Gets into your bones. When you're able to make it a day-to-day thing, when it motivates you on a day-to-day basis, then that's what develops the real avos Hashem. That's the second stage. The second half of the Rambam's parak is about that avos Hashem, the avos Hashem that drives every day, that motivates you every single day. But that ava has to come mitoch shalosh mabolishma. It has to be hakara first that this is the best thing for you. When you recognize this is the best thing for you, then you can do everything else. Then you can give like a mensch. The Al-Shikh says, that the reason why it says v'yikhuli truma is because a person has to recognize that the nesina to the Rebbeinu Shalom is a lakicha. You're taking when you give to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're not giving. When you're giving, just the Rebbeinu Shalom needs me, I'm going to give. Klal Yisrael needs me, I'm going to give. That doesn't lead Ava. That's not an Ava activity. When Ava activity is when you recognize that this is what makes you you. This is what's going to give you an opportunity to make something, to be something important, and be part of something important, part of something bigger than yourself, and that matters and that makes a difference. When you recognize it's the best thing for you, that it's v'yikhuli truma, that's the mitzvah. When you recognize that in your giving, you're taking. It's the main thing that people need to learn in relationships, need to learn, especially in marriage, is it's not the giving that's a hard thing. Giving is easy. It's learning fakir. It's learning how to take, how to recognize that everything you're doing is taking, everything you're doing is for you. And that's what makes it great. When you think it's great because I can give, because I can do mitzvahs and I can sacrifice, that doesn't lead to anything meaningful. When a person recognizes that the giving is really taking, is really making me better, is making me feel good about myself, is giving my life purpose, then your nesina is real nesina. And people who are married for a few years probably understand exactly what I'm talking about. If you give a gift to your wife, but it's all about what you did for her. So you I don't know, you take off a day of work or whatever. It's all about the sacrifice you did for her. It's not what she's interested in. Right? Most women, I think, this brand, she doesn't want that. Michael Toiva, she's not interested in your favors. But when you're able to express that you took off a day of work because you really wanted to do this, and you wanted to spend time, and it was a good thing for you, and you had a great time because you took off a day of work, then it's a great day. Then she's very appreciative of it. If you can give something and make it clear that the giving is that you really want to do this because it's something that's for you, and something that's meaningful for you, not because you're willing to, do some grace of tova, that's when things have meaning to them. And that's when it builds a relationship that can be made l'dei ava. That's the v'yikhuli truma, when you're giving over truma, when you're giving over matanos to Beis Hamikdash, when you're buying raffle tickets, of course. It's about you getting, not just a trip to the Bahamas. So you're getting because you're part of something. I should have said it on Shabbos whenever there's other people there. I'm going to watch on YouTube. Mystery prize. Yeah.
Say it again.
Huh?
You say it again.
I can say it again. It's true. You're gonna say something. You're gonna be the idiot who calls me out. No one else here would. But you would. Anyway, that's right. I think, like I said, it's not just Ovard. I think it's a very practical and exceedingly important idea that people need to recognize in marriage. That is what is going to build a relationship, and really only genuinely feeling that. And you feel like this is something that makes you happy and you recognize that this is your opportunity to do something with the family that's yours, then you're able to really do and give properly. Otherwise, it just doesn't really work. Okay.
Before we can ask the question,
please.
What does the motivation why does the motivation matter? Because if you're doing the act anyway, eventually it will get to Lishma. Like, who cares if you're doing it for selfish reasons or for no?
So I think the way I understand it is that because when you have to do it for a reason. People don't do things for no reason in life. Something's got to be motivating you.
Right. I'm saying,
so
what the reason is.
I understand. So the point he's saying is that if you're not up at the darga of Shalei Lishma, but of Lishma, but you pretend like you are, what you're going to end up is just creating some false image that's not real, that's not about relationship, and that's just about it's about you doing favors for the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what it becomes about then. And then your whole life becomes that you're doing favors for the Rebbeinu Shalom.
But if you're physically doing the act, why is it not going to become?
Because it only has if you're
physically doing the act,
because it's never going to get out of that stage. It's always going to be me doing favors for the Rebbeinu Shalom, or it's some ideal in mind that you've created, and it's never going to get out of that. Only when you start off the whole mitayt shel lishma b'lishma is because you start off understanding that this is great for me. Your great for me could be the bonus. It doesn't have to be altruistic. That can lead eventually when you keep doing it to an avos Hashem that the bonus becomes replaced by the Rebbeinu Shalom. But when you do it the other way, it's never going to get replaced by the Rebbeinu Shalom because the Rebbeinu Shalom is always there. It was just some fake garbage. I'm going to do favors for the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's never. You're never going to get out of that, because what made you feel good? The fact that I'm doing favors for the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom needs me. That's never going to be replaced. It's never going to be replaced with something altruistic. When you're doing it because it's for you, and you understand that, and you just have this motivation, you can switch it to this one. You can replace it with another motivation. When you're doing it for false reasons, you're never going to be able to replace that, and it's just going to keep getting worse.
Where was K? I want to see this.
It's the whole pair, but the Dalit and Hay. Okay.